So anybody who's been watching this channel for any period of time know that I am hesitant and support the Fed in not cutting rates at this time. And the reason I've stated consistently is the dollar. Because if the dollar goes down, then our rates are going to go up. So with the news that came out today with the jobs report, our unemployment rate down to 4.1%. Remember, for the last 100 years, the average is 5.6%. 5.6 for 4.1. The market is at all-time high. Look at all our metals, all-time high. Look at Bitcoin, basically an all-time high. There is literally nothing that shows that we need an interest rate cut. Now, I understand from the other side, which is from the political side. We all been through the Miran papers, which are now called the Mar-a-Lago Accords, whatever you want to call it. And basically, they want to drive the interest rates down like other countries have done. So if you look at Argentina in the last 30 years, not in the last 2 years, but the last 30 years, and the biggest example is Turkey, Erdogan, okay? He controls the interest rates. I think his son-in-law was head of the central bank. And they basically have like 65% inflation because they do not manage their money in the right way. So the question is if we force a cut, what could possibly happen? So yesterday in Britain, this whole article in the FT, I'm not going to print the whole thing in here, is that she cried when they had to pull back some of the budget. And so the whole article is about her, this MP crying and how Starmer supports her. But what interests us is that the UK government bonds and their currency, the pound, dropped sharply on Wednesday afternoon after Starmer declined to back the tearful Reeves over the dramatic gutting of its welfare bill. And so what happened is that they ditched a planned £5 billion of disability benefit cuts. And so when you look at the UK bill, their finances, they need about $149 billion this year in refinancing, with about 76 billion being new financing. So the $5 billion would be an additional onto the 75 up to $80 billion. And they point out here, which we have pointed out multiple times, is this is what happened with Liz Truss's ill-fated 2022 mini budget. So what does this look like? So on the left, you see Liz Truss mini budget. Now, I know they're at higher rates here, but let's go through the numbers. Liz suggested $80 billion, $82 billion tax cut for the oligarchs. You have to know something about the UK. The UK, as they've gone through their iterations from, the global power, the old America, what America has become, they became a haven for rich people around the world. Their whole tax code is for the oligarchs, all right? So she said, let's give them another 82 billion and then promise that for the poor people, we'll come up with another 80 billion in spending for you. Well, the pound crashed, the yield shot up, and Liz Truss didn't last as long as a head of lettuce. It was a very famous meme then. She was out within 30 days. So now this Rachel Reeves budget comes along and she says, okay, there's so much blowback on the cutting of the benefits to disability people that they brought it back into the budget yesterday. And yesterday, up shot the bonds and down went the currency. And you can see here the British 10-year gilt. You can see it was quite a day yesterday. And I did this today to show you there's been about a 50% retracement at this time. But, they still have to solve the problem of their budget. And just to close the loop, here's the British pound. Now, the British pound is up over the last year, but all the currencies are up since Trump came in, all right? You can literally see here how they've moved up, just like the euro, the yen, the Swiss franc. So many currencies have moved up against the dollar now. And the dollar Yesterday went above 11% down for the year. Okay, that's not a good sign. So here's the rub. Okay, Reeves, who's their, head of their budget, she's operating with minimal fiscal headroom. And now she has another $5 billion hole in her plans for the public finances. So either she's going to have to increase taxes for the autumn budget or pare back labor spending plans. How this happens, everyone's watching. Okay, so how does this come back to us? Well, when you think about things, UK's around 96% of their GDP in debt, right? They have a demographic problem. They have an economic problem. They have an immigration problem. They have a problem in the sense of how do you do everything? So the defense budget, the social budget, these things are all kind of crowding everybody out. And if you think about what we say about UK, other than the dollar being the global currency, our numbers are worse than theirs by about 20%, okay? And the dollar has been holding us in the game, but here's the problem. The dollar's now down 11%. And today I saw where everyone is selling. The number one seller in the world now are ETFs, foreign ETFs that are invested in U.S. stocks. People are just dumping them like crazy. And then on the other hand, we have all the central banks dumping dollars and buying gold, as we were all aware. So this is where I'm cautious, because if we come in, and Trump has now said like 4 or 5 times he wants 1% interest rates, and he's going to put someone in who does what he says. Because when we read the Miran papers, they were very clear. They want the Fed under the executive branch control so they can lower the interest rates and then do a forced conversion of our debt. They don't want to pay the interest on the debt. I don't blame them. It's our number one cost right now. And so they're like, okay, how do we get around not paying the people who we borrowed money from and say, we're not going to pay you interest anymore? This is what this is all about. So they're not going to let up on Powell. And what are we going to do? We're going to have a July cut now? I don't think so. With the unemployment, the markets where they're at, I don't know what would happen. I think everyone needs to sit down and think, and we need to start actually having a conversation on, okay, here's where the economy is at, here's where our inflation rate is at, here's where our debt is at, and it looks like today they're going to pass the big, beautiful bill, and the estimates from multiple sources are it's going to add 3.5 to 4.5 trillion on our deficit. So let's go in the middle, 4 trillion. It's going to add to our deficit. If they pass this bill and we end up with a Liz Truss situation, what do we do then? Does it happen? I don't know. You must remember something. We're in uncharted territories. All these suggestions coming out of the Miran paper, one, you have to remember something when we went over this. They said that our initial reactions are going to send the dollar up before it comes down. The dollar went straight down 11%. They said it was going to drive our interest rates lower. It drove our interest rates higher, right? And a lot of this has been driven because, let's be honest, they talk about it. They want to give the tax cut to the oligarchs, and they're about to do it. So what do we do as a country? We need to discuss this. This is not a presidential decision. We need to think through, why are we cutting the interest rates? Should we cut the interest rates? Tell me in the comments. And if we should, how far down do you think we should go? And if we shouldn't, what should we be watching to say when we should cut the interest rates? Like and follow, and thank you for listening.